Salvete discipuli. Hello, 8th grade, and welcome to our grammar lesson for this week. This video is going to be in two parts. Again, I don't know why my image is being so glitchy in recent videos, so apologize for that. I will make myself smaller so you don't have to worry quite so much about that anyway. Now, this chapter in stage 10, it's mainly review. There's a couple of new things we'll talk about, more so in the next video when we're talking about adjectives specifically. But I wanted to briefly spend some time just kind of going through all of our stuff with verbs, because technically in this chapter we are introduced to the first and second person plurals, so we and y'all. So we're just going to review all of our verb tenses, our verb endings, all of that stuff, just to refresh our memories for everything and talk a little bit about our pronouns. So thank you to Magister Cummings for this slide. I've added a couple extra little things that I'll be doing with my in-class students, but this is from her, so very grateful for that. So let's jump into our presentation. All right, so verb tenses. So refresh our memories for verbs in Latin. When we're given our vocabulary, our verbs are listed with 4 principal parts. We have the first, second, third, and fourth principal part. We're not worrying about the fourth principal part just yet, but we have seen things with all of the first 3. So the first principal part, if you remember, this is our first person singular present tense form of the verb. So all of our verbs are going to be that way for the first principal part. So amo, this is the I verb form of the verb. So in this case, amo is going to mean I love in the present tense. The second principal part is our infinitive forms. This is kind of that basic form of the verb that just gives us the action. So it will always end in re. So amare is going to be our form that means to love. And this is where we get our present stem from. So this is where we get the stem for the present tense and the imperfect tense. You just drop off that re and add your present tense or imperfect tense endings to that. With a couple of the verbs, there might be some vowel changes, but for the most part, that's how that works. And then we have our third principal part, and this is where things can get a little weird. This is our perfect tense, first person singular perfect tense. So this is where we get the perfect stem for perfect tenses. So amawi, this is going to be I loved in the past. Now that E ending is for the first person singular, and so you just take that off to get the stem. So amaw is our stem, to which you add all your perfect tense endings, those e, isti, it, imusistis, erunt endings. So this one can get tricky because sometimes the stem changes rather dramatically from the present stem to the perfect stem with certain verbs. So this is why it's important to learn your principal parts. So a lot of our verbs will have that V before the ending, so that's one of our clues that a verb is in the perfect tense, but it's not always the case. Sometimes it's more subtle, like our verb facio, facere, feci, factus. It's that A to the E change that can be a bit more subtle. Or like trado, tradere, tradidi. You have that extra didi part to it. So this is why it's important to learn our principal parts so that you can recognize the perfect stem of a verb from that third principal part. All right. So on that note, we have our verb charts, right? This is how I've been writing out our verb charts. We have first person, second person, and third person, and then we've got singulars and plurals. Right? Our first person singular is if I am doing something. The plural of I is we, obviously. Second person, again, this one is pretty rare in Latin. You mostly will see this in dialogues. But second person singular is going to be you, and then the plural is you all, or as I like to do in my class, y'all, because it's just more fun to say y'all. And then the third person, this is the most common person that you're going to be seeing in most languages. He, she, or it in the singular, and then in the plural if you're talking about they, right? Third people, they. So this is the order of all our verb charts. So all of the endings that we have match up to these persons. So I, you, he, she, it, we, y'all, they. That's how I chanted in my head. All right, so present tense, right? There's a few present tense songs. Magister Cummings likes to use the Mickey Mouse song, the like OSTMUSTISNT. So O, ST, mus, tis, and NT. So if a verb ends in O, it means that I am doing it. If it ends in S, that's you. T is he, she, or it. Mus is for we, tis is y'all, and NT is they. And these are just our simple endings for the present tense, and these are the endings we add onto this present stem. So the O, right, we have the first person singular, that O will often eat the A if there's an A in the stem here. So the A likes to go away. But amo, habeo, porto, right? But for all the rest of the forms, you add the endings onto this present tense stem. So amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant. So I love, you love, he, she, it loves, we love, y'all love, they love. You get very good at doing that quickly eventually. So these are, again, are just our present tense endings. So when verbs and action is happening in the present, ambulat, he is walking. Portat, he is carrying, or he carries. Or we've got two ways we can translate the present tense. But it's action that's happening right now. So in class, I would have us be working out on filling in these charts. Is a little hard to do via video, so don't worry too much about this, but it is good practice to practice writing out some of our different verbs in their present tense form. So if you want to give that a shot, you can go ahead and do that for practice. All right, and then we have our lovely irregular verb, sum, esse, fui, futurus. This is just one that you have to memorize because it's irregular, so it doesn't necessarily follow all of our normal patterns. So sum, es, est, sumus, estis, sunt. This is our verb to be. So sum, I am, es, you are, est, he, she, it is, sumus, we are, estis, y'all are, and sunt, they are. So this is used typically with adjectives or like predicate nominatives or things like that. So puer est laetus, the boy is happy. Servi sunt iratus, or irati, servi sunt irati, the slaves are angry. Sum yeyuna, I'm hungry. So you use this to describe yourself or someone else. Now in Latin, this is not going to be used as like a helping verb like it can be in English. Remember, so when you're translating something as like he is walking, in Latin, there's not going to be like, you wouldn't put est ambulat. That's he is, he walks. It doesn't work that way. So ambulat, just that verb by itself, can be translated as he walks or he is walking. You don't have the verb is in addition to the action verb, if that makes sense. So this is a verb that you will use when you are describing yourself or describing someone else, typically with adjectives, or like sum magistra, I am a teacher, things like that. All right, and then imperfect tense, imperfect sheep says ba. So my in-class students are used to me saying this at them all the time. So this is, everyone knows this one really well. These are the easiest verbs to recognize because of that ba in all of the endings. So bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, bant. Now you will notice we do still have our st, mus, tis, nt endings. So these endings are pretty consistent through most of the tenses. There's a couple variations, but these are endings will tell you who's doing the verb. The one that is different is first person singular will often end in an M instead of an O. We see that with sum as well. So bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, bant. And imperfect tense, remember, this is ongoing past action. So typically was or were verbing. So ambula bam, I was walking. Ambulat bat, he was walking. Habitabant, they were living. So it's that ongoing past action. And again, these ones are easy to recognize. It's just a matter of remembering to translate it with that ongoing sense. And then again, some more practice. So remember, the imperfect tense is also formed from that present stem. So go all the way back here. It's from this second principal part. You drop the re. So amabam, amabas, amabat, amabamos, amabatis, amabant. Habeo would be habeo, habere. So habebam, habebas, habebat, habebamos, habebatis, habebant. So that second principal part is where we get that imperfect stem from. So the present tense and the imperfect tense use the same stem. So that's nice. It's easy to recognize. And then the imperfect tense of our verb to be. This is an important one. So this is just the imperfect forms of sum es est, sumus estis sunt. So eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratis, erant. So the imperfect of sum, esse, fui, futurus are imperfect forms of our verb to be don't have the ba, because it's irregular, so it doesn't follow the normal patterns. So just remember that. Again, just kind of need to memorize this one. So eram, I was, eras, you were, erat, he, she, it was, eramus, we were, eratis, y'all were, and erant, they were. Now, this particular verb, the verb to be in the past, is usually going to use the imperfect tense, just because typically a state of being is inherently an ongoing sense. So the imperfect tense of this verb is going to be used most of the time when you're talking about someone was something or I was something in the past. If you're describing someone in the past, you're typically going to use the imperfect tense of this verb. So we've seen this in our stories. All right, and then our perfect tense. This one is our simple past. So this is that just simple past action, verbed, right? Something verbed. I verbed, you verbed, he, she, it verbed, we verbed, y'all verbed, they verbed. So like I walked, you walked, he, she, it walked. Now this is that verb tense that again is formed from that third principal part, which again has a stem change most of the time. So these are the ones that are a little bit trickier to recognize if you're not super familiar with the endings. Now, most of these endings are a bit different, so that does help, but the third person singular, which is one of the more common ones, this is the hardest one to differentiate between present tense and perfect tense because we do have present tense verbs that will end in an IT like this. So it's really, really important that you know those stems, those verb stems, and you're recognizing when a stem has changed from a present stem to a perfect stem so you know what tense. Now, oftentimes the context of the story is going to give you some clues about that as well. So just make sure you're paying attention. Look for helpful hints like having that V before the perfect tense ending, or X is another one. There's often U's before this ending as well. And again, the rest of them are a little bit different. So I, isti, it, imus, istis, and erunt. So it and imus are going to be the trickiest two to recognize, but the rest of them are pretty different, right? Present tense just has that NT. So if you have erunt, that tells you right away that it's perfect. And then same for E and isti, right? And istis. These are pretty different from our other ones. So instead of just TIS, it's istis specifically. So it's a bit longer. So E, isti, it, imus, istis, erunt. And again, knowing your perfect stems will help you, especially with that third person singular form. So just make sure you know your endings. You guys have been doing a pretty good job of recognizing tenses in your stories. All right, and then again, just some practice. If you want to practice turning your verbs into the perfect tense, remember you take that principal part, third principal part, so drop the I and that's your stem. The I on the ending is the first person. So ambula we, ambula wisti, ambula wit, ambula wimus, ambula wistis, ambula werunt, or like do, dare, dedi, datus. So do, dare, dedi. So dedi, dedisti, dedit, dedimus, dedistis,ederunt. So you can do some practice with your perfect tense forms of verbs there. And then this is something we haven't really talked about in Latin class because it's not a form we've seen. There is a perfect tense of our verb, our irregular verb sum esse fui futurus, and funny enough, the perfect tense of this verb is regular. So the present and imperfect forms are irregular, but the perfect tense does follow very regular patterns. So you take that third principal part, fui, and it's our normal perfect tense ending, fui, fuisti, fuit, fuimus, fuistis, fuerunt. Now, like I said, typically when you're using a past tense form of the verb to be, it's more often going to be in the imperfect just because a state of being is kind of inherently an ongoing thing. This form is used, we haven't seen it in our textbooks yet, so don't really worry too much about that, but did just want to include it here so you do know that there is a perfect tense form of this verb. It is very regular as far as its endings and forms go. It follows the normal patterns, but we're just not going to be seeing this just yet. For the most part, our past tense forms of the verb to be will be using the imperfect tense. All right, and then the last thing is our pronouns. So we've seen ego and tu, and then this chapter we're introduced to nos and vos. So ego means I, tu is you, and then nos is the plural of ego. So nos means we, and vos means y'all or you all. This is the plural of tu. So these are our two new pronouns. So you'll be seeing these. We technically introduced you guys to all of the verb forms, maybe a little bit ahead of the textbook does. But so these pronouns will help clue you in to your subject. Again, pronouns in Latin are not really necessary. They're a little redundant just because the endings of verbs already tell you who's doing it. So in the first and second person, the ending of the verb already tells you if I or you or we or y'all are doing something. So pronouns are a little just kind of extra help there. So these pronouns exist to help you out, and this textbook includes them to kind of help you get used to recognizing your subjects a little bit more easily. But remember, you can't always just look at the verb for that information as well. All right, so a couple of practice questions. Identify the tense of the underlined word and then translate it. So we have tu ambulas, so we've got one of our pronouns, tu, and then ambulas here ends in that S. So again, that S tells us the same thing that tu tells us. This is going to be you walk or you are walking. This is a present tense form of our verb. We have grumio et clemens dant, right? So we have grumio et clemens, and then dant. We look at our verb. This is a present tense, do, dare, dedi, datus. So dant is present tense. And so our subjects, grumio and clemens, give. Typically, you're going to have direct object and indirect object with that. But all right, and this is one of our new pronouns, nos, circumspectabamus. Now again, ba, imperfect sheep says ba, so that tells us that this is an imperfect tense verb. It's a very long verb. So nos means we. We also know the we from the mus ending. So we were looking around. So imperfect tense, we were verbing. We were looking around. Pueri laudaverunt here. We have that erunt, that is a perfect tense ending. Another clue is that V before the ending there. That's your clue that it's perfect as well. Laudo, laudare, laudavi. So est estis erunt. That's a perfect tense ending, plus it's got that V in the stem. That's a clue that it's perfect. So the boys praised. The boys praised. Vos, another one of our new pronouns. Vos, remember, is plural of two, so y'all. And then videbatis, ba, again, our imperfect sheep says ba, so this is imperfect. So y'all were looking or seeing, video, videre, to see. So y'all were seeing or looking. And then ego sum. Ego means I, and we have our irregular verb to be, sum esse fui futuro. So ego sum just means I am. All right. If you want to try filling this chart out, or well, again, it's hard because we're not in class. We're just doing this over video. But if you want to see if you can figure out the tense and the subjects of these, I will post these slides on Google Classroom, so you can go through that and look at it. But this was just a kind of an overview of your verbs. I know this is all information we have seen before, but it is good to refresh our memories. So hopefully this was a little helpful. If you don't already have them, make sure you have these verb charts somewhere in your notes. These are good to have. Practice writing out your verb endings over and over again. Have them memorized, know them, love them. And go ahead and check out the other video for grammar for this week, where we're going to be talking about adjectives. And that's going to be some more new information for you guys. So definitely check out that one. Hopefully this was a helpful little review for you. And let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the other video. Valete discipuli.